Lesson 14. Adventurous Children. On a Sunday, Rahab, Daruk, and Abha were loitering near a railway station in a country. While hanging around, they reached the gate of the station. Hush, stop! What's that? Asked Rahab. It was a sort of rustling, rumbling sound. They listened to the sound joyfully. The sound stopped for some time and again started. Now the sound did not stop but grew louder and more rustling and rumbling. Look! Cried Abha, pointing her finger towards a tree. The tree she pointed at was one of those that have rough, grey leaves and white flowers. The berries, when they come, are bright scarlet, but if you pick them, they disappointed you. And as Abha pointed, the tree was moving, not just the way trees ought to move when the wind blows, but as though it were alive creatures and were walking down the side of the cutting. It's moving, cried Abha. Oh, look! And so are the others. It looks like the woods in Macbeth. Amazing, said Daruk. Surprisingly, I always knew the railway was enchanted. It is nothing but a magic. For all trees for about 20 yards of the opposite bank seemed to be slowly walking down towards the railway line. The tree with the grey leaves bringing up to rear like some old shepherd driving a flock of green sheep. What is going on here? Said Daruk. It's too much magic for me. I don't like it. We had better leave this place soon. But Rahab and Daruk clung fast to the rail and watched breathlessly, and Abha made no movement towards going home by herself. The trees kept on moving. Some stones and loose earth fell down and rattled on the railway metals far below. It's all coming down, Daruk tried to say, but he found there was hardly any voice to say it. And indeed, just as he spoke, the great rock on the top of which the walking trees were leaned slowly forward. After some time, the tree stood still and shivered. Living with the rock, they seemed to hesitate a moment and then rock. Trees, grass, and bushes, with a rushing sound, slipped right away from the face of the cutting and fell on the line with a thundering crash that could have been heard half a mile off. A cloud of dust rose up. Oh, said Daruk astonishingly. Isn't it exactly like when coals come in? If there was not any roof to the cellar and you could see down. Look what a great mound it's made, said Rahab. You are right, Rahab, said Abha. That's all, take some sweeping up, said Rahab. Yes, said Daruk slowly. He was still leaning on the fence. It seems to be a big danger. The 10.40 down hasn't gone by yet. We must prevent this frightful accident. Let's run, said Rahab and began. But Daruk cried, Come back, and looked at Mother's watch. No time, he said. It's 10 miles away and it's past 10. Couldn't we? Suggested Abha breathlessly. Couldn't we climb up a telegraph post and do something to the wires? We don't know how, said Daruk. They do it in war, said Abha. I know, I have heard of it. The only cut them. Silly, said Daruk, and that does not do any good. And we couldn't cut them even if we got up, and we couldn't get up if we had anything red. We could go down on the line and wave it. They got down the stairs. Rahab was pale and shivering. Daruk's face looked thinner than usual. Abha was red faced and damp with anxiety. Oh, how hot I am, she said, and I thought it was going to be cold. I wish we hadn't put on our flannel petticoats. Rahab turned at the bottom of the stairs. Oh, yes, she cried. They are red. Let's take them off. They did, and with the petticoats rolled up under their arms along the railway, spirting the newly fallen mound of stones and rock and earth, and sent crushed, twisted trees. They ran at their best pace. Daruk led, but the girls were not far behind. They reached the corner that hid the mound from the straight line of railway that ran half a mile without any curve or corner. Now, said Daruk, taking hold of the largest flannel petticoat, you are not, Abha faltered. You are not going to tear them. Shut up, said Daruk with brief sternness. Oh, yes, said Rahab. Tear them into little bits if you like. Don't you see, Abha, if we can't stop the train, there will be a real live accident with people killed. Oh, horrible! Here, Daruk, you will never tear it through the band. She took the red flannel petticoat from him and tore it off an inch from the band. Then she tore the other one in the same way. There, said Daruk, tearing in his turn. Each petticoat was divided into 3 pieces. Now we have got 6 flags. He looked at the watch again. And we have got 7 minutes. We must have flag staffs. The knives given to boys are for some odd reason. If the kind of steel that keeps sharp, the young saplings had to be broken off. 2 came up by the roots. The leaves were stripped from them. We must cut holes in the flags and run the stick through the holes, said Daruk, and the holes were cut. The knife was sharp enough to cut flannel with. 2 of the flags were set up in heaps of loose stones beneath the sleepers of the down line. Then Abha and Daruk each took a flag and stood ready to wave it as soon as the train came in sight. I shall have the other 2 myself, said Daruk, because it was my idea to wave something red. They are our petticoats, though. Abha was beginning, but Rahab interrupted. Oh, it doesn't matter who waves what if we can save the train. Perhaps Daruk had not rightly calculated the number of minutes it would take the 10.40 to get from the station to the place where they were. Or perhaps the train was late. Anyway, it seemed a very long time that they waited. Abha grew impatient. I expect the watch is wrong and the train's gone by, said she. Daruk relaxed the heroic attitude he had chosen to show off his two flags, and Rahab began to feel sick with suspense. Now they began to think they had been standing there for hours and hours, holding these silly little red flannel flags that no one would ever notice. The train wouldn't care for our red flags. It would go rushing by them and around the corner and go crashing into the awful mound, and everyone would be killed. Her hands grew very cold and trembled so that she could hardly hold the flag. And then came the distant rumble and hum of the metals, and a puff of white steam shot far away along the stretch of line. Start form, said Daruk, and wave like mad when it gets to that furze bush. Step back, but go on waving. Don't stand on the line, Rahab. The train came rattling along very fast. No good, cried Rahab. The two little flags on the line swayed as the nearing train shook and loosened the heaps of loose stones that held them up. One of them slowly leaned over and fell on the line. Abba jumped forward and caught it up and waved it. Her hands did not tremble now. It seemed that the train came on as fast as ever. It was very near now. Keep off the line, you silly cuckoo, said Daruk fiercely. It's off good, Rahab said again. Stand back, cried Daruk suddenly, and he dragged Abha back by the arm. But Abba cried, not yet, not yet, and waved her two flags right over the line. The front of the engine looked black and enormous. Its sound was loud and harsh. Oh, stop, 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 cried Abba. No one heard her, at least Daruk and Rahab didn't, for the oncoming rush of the train covered the sound of her sound with a mountain of sound. But afterwards she used to wonder whether the engine itself had not heard her. It seemed almost as though as it had, for it slackened and stopped, not 20 yards from the place where Abha's two flags waved, waving the flags. And when the driver and the fireman had got off the engine, Daruk and Abba had gone to meet them and pour out their excited tale of the awful mound just round the corner. Abba still waved flags, but more and more feebly and jerkily. When the others turned towards her, she was lying across the line, with her hands flung forward and still gripping the sticks of the little red flannel flags. The train driver saw Abba lying across the line. He picked her up and led her on the cushion of a first-class carriage. The next day it was published in the newspaper that these brave children were awarded for their adventurous work.